The sun was setting over Puente Grande prison, casting long shadows on the crumbling walls. This prison was notorious, known as one of the toughest places in Mexico. It wasn't just some regular prison. It housed the worst of the worst, the most dangerous criminals, including drug lords who had all the power and money they could ever want. Among these criminals was Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the infamous leader of the Sinaloa cartel.
One of the world's richest, most notorious drug kingpins broke out of prison.
Former cartel leader is considered one of the most dangerous drug traffickers in the world.
He was a man who had built an empire of drugs that spanned borders, feared by many and respected by few. Puente Grande was like a fortress, treated more like a military base than a prison. 2 guards were assigned to every inmate, ensuring that the violent and cunning men inside had little chance of escape. The guards wielded heavy weapons, patrolling the watchtowers and manning checkpoints. The prison walls were thick and reinforced with steel, a design built to keep even the most dangerous men inside. It was hard to imagine anyone breaking out of such a place. Despite the risk, El Chapo had a reputation for pulling off the impossible. His first arrest was back in 1993, but even then he didn't stay behind bars for long. He managed to run his empire from inside the prison, thanks to his knack for bribing every guard and officer who crossed his path. With money flowing freely into their pockets, these once loyal servants turned into allies who provided him with comfort and luxury. A king living in a gilded cage, he had everything he wanted in prison: alcohol, gourmet meals, women, and visits from his wives. He even had guards who would turn a blind eye to his illegal activities. While others would be rotting away, El Chapo was plotting and planning, all because of his vast wealth and the connections he formed inside. At the heart of his operation was Damaso Lopez, the deputy chief of security. Damaso wasn't just a guard, he was El Chapo's right-hand man. With bribes flowing like water, their relationship morphed into a friendship. Damaso enjoyed the lavish lifestyle that came with being close to the powerful drug lord. Money and gifts, cars and houses. El Chapo ensured that his loyal friend was well taken care of. This relationship allowed him a unique level of comfort within the prison. But while El Chapo was living in luxury, he had a plan brewing. He wanted to reform drug trafficking. Traditional routes of smuggling, air, land, and sea, were outdated in his eyes. El Chapo began investing in underground tunnels, hiring engineers and architects to dig elaborate passages leading straight to the U.S. Instead of transporting drugs like the old days, they could simply move them beneath the ground. No one would see them coming, and the profits were enormous. Over time, El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel began to rake in an astounding $20 million a month, even from behind bars. However, as much as he thrived, trouble was brewing. In late 2000, whispers began to spread through the corridors of the prison. The Mexican Supreme Court had proposed a new law allowing the extradition of dangerous criminals, including drug lords like El Chapo, to the United States. The very thought struck fear into his heart. American prisons were notorious, holding criminals far more securely than Mexican establishments. He'd lose everything: his power, his connections, and most importantly, he'd be cut off from running his empire. The moment he heard the news, he felt the icy grip of fear tightening around him. El Chapo understood that he had to act quickly. Sitting in his cell one night, he gathered those he could trust, the friends he had built alliances with. He knew he had to devise a plan to escape before it was too late. El Chapo met with Damaso and devised a plan. It was risky but necessary. This plan required timing, trust, and sheer guts. On January 19, 2001, they would put their escape plan into action, and El Chapo was convinced that it was their only hope. He needed to keep things hush-hush to avoid drawing attention from prison officials. Damas, as he called Damaso, assured him they could reduce the number of guards in El Chapo's section of the prison. They didn't want to draw attention during the escape. and Damaso understood the importance of keeping a low profile. To help with the plan, El Chapo recruited a trusty worker named Chito who handled the laundry. Chito was ideal for the job because, as a lowly worker, no one ever paid attention to him. El Chapo approached Chito with a bribe that was hard to refuse. With cash in his hands, Chito agreed to help El Chapo escape, using his position to facilitate the getaway. The night before the escape, El Chapo was restless. Despite being comfortable in prison, the impending danger weighed heavily on his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that his window of opportunity was closing. As he lay on his hard prison bed, he thought about his family, his empire, and how much he wanted out. On the day of the escape, tension ran high. El Chapo's heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves as Chito rolled the laundry cart down the corridor, aptly loaded with dirty prison clothes. El Chapo had to stay hidden beneath the layers of fabric, counting down the moments until freedom. Once Chito reached the first checkpoint, the guards seemed indifferent, distracted by other conversations and laundry duty. The plan was working. El Chapo felt a rush of adrenaline as they neared the second checkpoint. Everything hinged on this moment. Just then, the alarms blared, sending a shockwave through the air. The guards snapped to attention, their eyes wide with surprise. Panic surged through El Chapo. This was not part of the plan. Chito's hands trembled as he tried to keep the cart steady, but the alarm echoed like a siren in their ears. Without a second thought, El Chapo leapt out of the cart, startling everyone around him. Time froze for a brief moment, and then he took off running. The guards shouted. Confusion spread and chaos erupted behind him. Adrenaline pumped through his veins as he sprinted through the narrow corridors of Puente Grande, the taste of freedom drawing him closer. He could hear the guards yelling, but he didn't look back. He didn't have time to. He was running for his life. Damaso had to keep the guards busy for just a little longer, and El Chapo raced through the prison, dodging doors and avoiding detection. Finally, he reached the outer gates of the prison. The moment he ran through those doors, he was flooded with exhilaration. Out on the prison grounds, sunlight spilled across the pavement, painting his world in bright colors. Freedom was so close. He dashed toward a waiting vehicle, where Damaso sat behind the wheel, ready to speed away. With a quick jump, El Chapo hopped into the back seat. "Go, go!" he shouted, and Damaso hit the gas, tearing away from the prison as the sound of sirens wailed behind them. As they sped down dark back roads, the adrenaline still coursed through El Chapo's body. This was it. He was a free man, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed on him like a heavy blanket. Authorities wouldn't take long to realize he was on the run, and they wouldn't stop hunting him. "Where do we go?" Damaso asked, glancing nervously at El Chapo in the rearview mirror. "Anywhere. Just drive," El Chapo replied, heart racing. The danger had transformed from a thought into reality. Everything he had feared was happening, but now he was free. The plan was to stay low, and El Chapo decided that the best move was to get out of the area and blend in with the shadows. They cruised past familiar towns, but the thrill of freedom was tinged with anxiety. He felt a swell of determination rising within him. He had faced danger before, and he wouldn't back down now. As they drove further into the outskirts, El Chapo formulated his thoughts. He knew that he had to think ahead, lay low, and rebuild his empire in the underground world he had mastered. The thrill of the escape was just the beginning. He wouldn't let this setback keep him down. After a while, they found shelter in a remote cabin owned by one of El Chapo's old associates. The cabin was in the middle of nowhere, cloaked by trees and kept hidden from prying eyes. It wasn't much, but it would give them time to breathe and think. Once settled in, El Chapo took a moment to collect himself. "We did it, but it's not over," he told Damaso. "They'll be looking for me." Damas nodded. Anxiety etched on his face. "You need a plan, El Chapo. They'll come for you, but we can't get sloppy now." El Chapo agreed and turned to the map they had spread out on the table. "I want to stay in the mountains for a while. We'll contact some old friends, see who can help. This is just the beginning. He felt the fire inside him, knowing how to turn this escape into an opportunity for something greater. Days turned into weeks, and rumors spread about El Chapo's daring escape. The media was buzzing, and a manhunt was underway. As his face plastered newspapers and screens, El Chapo had no choice but to make himself a ghost, fading into the background while the world speculated about what had happened. Using secret connections, he started assembling a team of loyal men. Those who stood by him were the ones he trusted, friends from the past who had helped him build his empire. Together, they focused on creating a new system for drug trafficking, one that would rebuild everything he lost while he was incarcerated. For El Chapo, time was an ally. He moved carefully, setting up a network to communicate discreetly, while always staying one step ahead of the authorities. He became a shadow, slipping in and out of towns, relying on safe houses and loyal contacts to stay connected to his empire. After several months in hiding, he felt ready to regain his power. He met with contacts and began sending shipments underground, using old tunnel routes that he had initially built while in Puente Grande. The drugs flowed once again, and with each successful shipment, his power grew. It was a game of chess. He had to think 3 steps ahead. He knew the authorities were still hunting for him, but he had the advantage of surprise and knowledge. Each time he sent out a shipment, he would distance himself and lay low, always aware of the risks. With time, he felt invincible, as if he had regained everything he lost and more. The Sinaloa cartel began to flourish, thriving on his escape's notoriety. El Chapo was no longer just a man. He was a legend, a symbol of the game he ruled. As he continued to plot and strategize, the world outside was shifting. Rumors about his escape began to die down, but whispers were creeping through the cracks of the underworld. El Chapo wasn't just another fugitive. He was a force to be reckoned with. Authorities realized they had underestimated him. With the law still on his tail, El Chapo pushed forward. He made plans to enter the U.S. again, but this time, he would be prepared. He wanted to create his underground network, one that could rival even the most significant empires. One fateful night, he gathered his men at the safe house in the woods. They spoke in low voices, knowing the stakes. "We're going to be the shadow in the darkness," he told them. "We will outsmart them at every turn." As his men nodded, El Chapo felt a rush of excitement. He was not only planning his comeback, he was building an empire that could bring him more power than before. The thrill of the chase, the danger of being hunted, he thrived on it. Days turned into weeks, strategies evolved, and he solidified his underground network, bridging connections from Mexico to the U.S. He had risen from the ashes of his escape, ready to take control of his empire again. His life had become a whirlwind of danger and excitement, but he embraced every moment of it. El Chapo was no longer just a criminal. He was a master strategist, and each move he made was calculated. He was a man who had broken free from the system and refused to be caught again. His legacy was just beginning, and he wouldn't stop until he reclaimed everything he had lost. The escape from Puente Grande prison was just the first chapter of a gripping story filled with suspense, power, and the unyielding desire to be the king of the drug world. El Chapo wasn't done yet. This saga was far from over.